Counterculture with Danielle D'Souza-Gill. The culture's gone crazy, media's gone mad, and reason has become repugnant. Here we focus on facts and how to fight back. Tonight we'll be discussing the FBI and its targeting of American citizens as domestic terrorists. We'll also speak with FBI whistleblower Steve Friend about this important issue. On September 20th, 2001, mere weeks after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, President George Bush addressed Congress. In that address, he did what no other president before had ever done. He personally seized the right to declare war. Not just any kind of war, but a war against an ideology, radical Islamic extremism. This meant the target of his declaration of war wasn't a country or an alliance of enemy nations. No, President Bush declared war on what he himself described as a group of, quote, loosely affiliated organizations and people spread anywhere throughout the world, even on our own soil. Because this was a war declared against an idea, there was no way to know how long it would last or even what victory would look like in this case. Indeed, what came to be known as the Global War on Terror dragged on for years. That September 20th declaration speech was just a formality, however. A mere 2 days earlier, on September 18th, Congress had already given the president all the authority he needed to combat this threat in the 2001 authorization for the use of military force. That authorization allowed the president to use any and all force against anyone, anywhere connected with the 9/11 terrorists, their networks, or those who gave them aid or comfort. Add any and all force meant any and all military force. Though Congress had never declared war on terror, for all intents and purposes, our country was formally at war. Because our enemy could be living among us here, within our own borders, on October 26, 2001, Congress passed the Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism Act of 2001, a mouthful of a law more commonly known as the Patriot Act. This law undid decades of legal reform following the Church Committee hearings of the early 70s by giving the government authorization to secretly spy on her own citizens in the name of national security. At the time, many people supported this, and by government, I mean the FBI spying on you. This too was fundamental change. We had formerly functioned as a law enforcement agency transformed overnight into a secret police force tasked with domestic surveillance. The Patriot Act was just another tool in the war on terror. Had there been no attack on 9/11, the act would have never passed and the FBI would have remained strictly committed to federal law enforcement. Immediately following this change in mission, the FBI was reorganized under the director Robert Mueller. Instead of allowing individual special agents the ability to pursue crime fighting under their respective field offices, the chain of command was centralized and made more rigid. The FBI went from being an organization of specialized crime fighters to another combatant in the war on terror, complete with an unambiguous command and control hierarchy. With the exception of its lack of uniforms, it was a military organ in every other way, fundamentally different than what it was. While this was going on, the military itself was adopting a new set of warfighting protocols that appropriated non-military civilian institutions. The concept of abusing law has been around for as long as the law itself. It's what we traditionally refer to as legal malpractice. But in the post-9/11 days, the military embraced a combination of warfare and law called Lawfare. Former Air Force Deputy Judge Advocate General Charles J. Dunlap Jr. developed the concept of lawfare, describing it as, quote, the use or misuse of law as a substitute for traditional military means to accomplish an operational objective, end quote. In other words, lawfare is a form of asymmetrical warfare. It's interesting to note that the very man who originated the concept makes no more distinction between use and misuse. In the post-Bush years, President Obama set about commandeering these tools of warfare and turning them on the very country they were meant to protect. Upon taking office, Obama immediately cleaned out the upper echelons of the bureaucracy and filled its ranks with communist fellow travelers, many of whom remain entrenched to this very day. Under Obama, government operations against American citizens increased at a rapid pace. For example, Obama used drones to commit multiple extrajudicial executions of Americans who were never charged of any crimes. His administration is responsible for the Fast and Furious gun-running scandal and the IRS Lois Lerner scandal. But it was in its final days that the Obama administration performed its most audacious acts of subversion. These included the numerous fabricated grounds for investigation and even impeachment that would haunt his successor throughout the Trump administration years. Those missions included numerous violations of civil rights on purely political grounds, unwarranted wiretaps, the laundering of fictional Oppo research, and in the case of General Flynn, outright lying on official documents in order to frame an innocent man. Known government participants in these acts ranged from the FBI to the DOJ to the State Department and even the various intelligence agencies. Not only did these operations not result in any disciplinary action against the people responsible, the same government organizations responded to the outrage over their abuse by ramping up their behavior and laughing in the face of Americans. Now, under Joe Biden, those same people and institutions are conducting naked acts of aggression on anyone and everyone that they can get their hands on. Protesters, Trump administration officials and attorneys, Christians, parents, any conservatives. That's who they're targeting these days. These days on the right, a lot of digital ink is being spilled over the attempts by our Congress to address these abuses in various investigatory committees, such as the House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. While the subcommittee is gaining ground in the fight against our corrupt government, its very name fails to highlight the real problem. The standard conservative response to call for gun control is to focus on the person who committed the crime and not blame the weapon they used. This is very logical. The crime is committed by the person wielding it, not the object itself. This person could have used another object and committed a crime. Why don't we apply the same logic to what's been going on with our government? When it comes to weapons, there's no ambiguity for the motive behind their use. Whenever someone uses something as a weapon, the intent is either to subdue or kill. That is the function of using the weapon. When we say government is being weaponized, what we are really saying is that people like Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, are waging war against the citizens of our country. It might be a form of direct violent conflict, like when Ashley Babbitt was shot at point-blank range, or it might be a form of asymmetrical warfare, like using lawfare to round up your political opponent and his followers. But it is every bit as much a form of warfare as any other weapon used by the government in its war on terror.